So, for this video, we're going to do something special. We're going to talk about some of the things that have been discussed in various shapes or forms. We're going to be talking about the new Civics and the ethic options for MegaCorp. Now, of course, 2.2 has had a big overhaul as well. We're going to touch on a couple of these that are coming with the patch, but MegaCorp is going to be the main focus of this particular video. First of all, I want to preface this, that this is not an opinionated video. This is not a review. This is just a general overview of, well, Spacebook and the potential civics that it can have on our capital of Zuck. Because anyway, we have selected a corporate entity which has a election every 20 years to get a new ruler. In that regard, they're very similar to an oligarchy, where they have, of course, also a ruler every 20 years. Their administrative cap is +20. That means they can have a lot of districts, etc. But their empire size penalty is pretty large, which means that you can't really build them all that big. They're orientated as a tall style empire with a lot of quote-unquote subsidiaries, which is very similar to the tributary style of vassalization you can get in the base game. Now, as a corporation, we can have ethics, which is different from the Gestalt consciousness, because Gestalt consciousness doesn't really have any ethics, so we can be whatever we want. However, some of the civics are not available to all ethics. However, I find that authoritarian, let's take a look here quickly, authoritarian militarists, so militarists, spiritual, and authoritarian will have access to every single ethic on the list. And this means that there's a lot of flexibility here. However, it does also mean that some of the empires will not like you, specifically due to the authoritarian setup. The materialist won't like you because you're spiritualist, and the pacifist won't like your militarist style, but it doesn't really matter because you can shoot them out of space anyway. And also, the authoritarian gives you access to the stratified economy and the enslaved aliens mechanic, which is going to be important for this particular setup. Anyway, let's take a look at our civics. So number one on the list is the media conglomerate. The media conglomerate actually reduces your war exhaustion gain, most likely due to TV propaganda, due to Space and Friends and all that stuff. And the citizen pop happiness is increased by 5, which has knock-on effects in terms of resource production and whatnot, and also that they can live in more places, which is very useful for habitability. Naval contractors increases your naval capacity plus 15%. This is 15%. Percent bonuses are huge because, again, similar to media conglomerates, any other civic for that matter, anything involving percentages will have knock-on effects on the base value. So you can effectively grow your naval capacity a lot faster by building anchorages on your space stations and whatnot, and then the naval capacity bonus of 50% will come on top of that, so you'll have a rather massive bonus over time. And the 50% is not something that you should overlook. That is a huge bonus. If you want to very quickly rebuild your empire's civics by spending 250 influence, then that's definitely possible, especially if you need a large fleet. Then there's PMCs, private military contractors. Army damage plus 20%, army upkeep minus 20%. Army damage by itself, you can still overcome planetary targets with superior force quite easily. Army upkeep, well, by the time that you're running around with 1,000 units of army, then upkeep is most likely not going to be a problem anymore. PMCs or anything involving army damage or army upkeep is something that I generally don't take, because I think there's more value in other things. Private prospectors, it gives you access to a unique item, something that has been removed from the game for quite some time. It used to be available in the Prosperity Tradition tree, and that is the Private Colony Ship. Now, the Private Colony Ship is a ship that is basically cheaper to get, and basically what it does is it will put a pop in that ship at random, and will give you any random ethic that will colonize a planet. So it's very, very problematic for ethics divergence, and that can potentially be a problem when it comes to managing your factions. But getting a cheaper colony ship is actually really nice. Although the main problem with this is that, well, because mega corporations have an empire size penalty, you probably want to get this relatively early on and then maybe cycle it out later. As soon as colonies are no longer really a problem, and or at least colonizable, and as soon as well, your resources are becoming so vast that you can easily get any colony ship just at the drop of a hat, this becomes completely moot. So then it's time to respec your empire in terms of influence, as well as sort of edicts and civics. But yeah, that's going to cost you 250 influence, which is, of course, an issue. Then we have the Ruthless competition, which is going to increase leader level cap and experience gain by 10%, which is a real nice combination for Polytechnic education in the discovery tree, especially leader cap and leader experience gain. Again, those knock-on effects are huge, and especially early game where you need to grow those scientists as fast as you can so you can survey more. This is actually really nice to have. Trading posts will give you more starbase capacity. It's very similar to some of the standard civics that give you more star bases. More star bases are always good because you can defend space, you can put more of the posts down, the star bases that will give you more trade value and whatnot. And that's kind of nice, I think, especially if you're in a nebula, for instance. Of course, you don't know that at the start of the game, but let's say that you've run out of star bases and you need more capacity because you need to get the minerals from a nebula. This is a really nice thing to go do. Let's quickly scroll up. We're going to go and actually skip criminal heritage for now. We'll leave that to the end of the video. Brand loyalty, monthly unity, plus 15%. That's, especially at the start of the game, when you want to get through those tradition trees quickly and get ascension perks. This right here is amazing. Anything involving more unity is great, because getting through those tradition trees early, getting access to the ascension perks that you want, especially Ecomonopolists or anything along those lines, or corporate trading and whatnot, just to get the costs down for those trade agreements and whatnot. Brand loyalty is actually kind of nice. Franchising, but it does is that it gives a subsidiary subject on relation power. Subject power by relations down to 33. Basically, the chance of a subsidiary revolting against you will lower. Also, the impact of branch offices on our empire size is decreased by 25%, and that's a cost modifier right there. The thing is that unless you're running a lot of subsidiaries, this is basically useless. The 25% impact on branch offices could be nice if you're building a lot of branch offices, but still having, yeah. Let's put it this way, as a player, you're generally going to outclass your subjects by quite some margin. And this is very much a niche scenario, especially maybe it'd be nice to get if your empire has to very quickly swap to a franchising, for instance, because one of your vassals is becoming too strong. And that one right there is maybe interesting in that scenario. Free traders, trade value plus 10%. Again, a flat percentage bonus on trade value is pretty huge. Getting those bonuses in is nice. And branch office value, same story there. Overall, there's a couple of policies in the game where you can set what trade value actually does, whether or not you want to use it to generate trade goods, whether or not you wanted to use it to generate energy, etc. So this could be very nice if you're, say, in the mid game and you want to boost your trade value because your economy is struggling a little bit, or you want to get a one-up on the other species and just buy yourself into a mega structure. This is pretty much the way to go, and I really like this one. But this is more of a mid game because trade value at the start of the game is not going to really be that high, and 10% on, say, 100 trade value is 10 energy, and it's better spent on other things. We're going to skip Gospel of the Masses for now. Indentured assets. Slave output plus 10% and enslaved pop ratio 40%. So this is interesting. I'm not entirely sure what's going on here with the enslaved pop ratio. I think what it means is that 40% of your population will be automatically enslaved or at least the game is going to try to make sure that 40% of your population are in fact slaves. But the output bonus is actually kind of nice, especially if they're working in the mines or in the energy fields or in the farms or something along those lines. So that right there is pretty nice to have, and is maybe quite good. Although I do feel that free traders in the mid game is more interesting. Anyway, now back towards the more interesting ones that you guys want to see. Let's take a look at Gospel of the Masses. So Spiritualist pops will give you additional trade value on all planets and branch offices. Let's keep that in mind. All the spiritualists will give you a bonus to trade value. You can build a Temple of Prosperity at branch offices. Now, the Temple of Prosperity gives you a Spiritualist ethics attraction of 50%. That means wherever you build a Temple of Prosperity on a branch office, the population on that planet is going to slowly but steadily move towards spiritualism. It doesn't really matter what the main trait is or the main ethic of that empire. It will slowly but steadily move over towards spiritualist, which means that you're going to get a bonus for every single pop you quote-unquote convert, because you're tithing pretty much, which is really, really interesting, because you're going to get a lot of trade value out of this if there are a lot of spiritualist pops. And again, this has a knock-on effect. The more you get it, the more spiritualists you get, the more resources you're going to get. So basically, if you're going to go down this route, basically what I'm going to do is build a Temple of Prosperity on that planet, as long as you don't have any other needs, which by itself is kind of cool. Then finally is Criminal Heritage, and this is probably the most fun one in the game, but it's not necessarily very useful, I feel. Basically what this is you're building a cartel or a crime syndicate or something along those lines. Now, the thing with this is you get access to a unique set of buildings that you can build at your branch offices. Now, every single branch office building will increase the crime rate on that planet the branch office is on. The higher the crime, the more value the branch office has. But there's also events attached to this, which means that you can be shut down in terms of branch offices. So basically, you want to keep building your crime levels on those planets. And Criminal Heritage is fascinating as well, because you cannot form commercial pacts. A corporation needs a commercial pact in order to be able to put a branch office on another planet. Without this, you can put branch offices wherever you want without actually needing to ask it. You just mosey on in there and be like, yo, this is our turf now. You put your branch office in there. You cannot join federations, which means you will have a slight disadvantage. And I already mentioned the special crime buildings as well. The best part about this is that you can combine this with Gospel of the Masses, which means that you will get something called a subversive cult, which is kind of cool, to say the least. A subversive cult, basically, you can do whatever the hell you want, and you can only be shut down by whatever government is nearby, and they're like, well, we don't want you guys here, and they'll have to spend resources to get you out of there. But the more crime there is in your world, the more difficult it's going to be for them to get rid of you. So unless you get kind of busted in the early stages, you're going to be pretty fine, and the amount of resources you're going to get are kind of cool. But yeah, civics are pretty nice. Let's have a quick look at the non-standard civics here. We got the new Byzantine bureaucracy. The Byzantine bureaucracy is kind of interesting because it reduces the pop amenities usage by 10%, pop housing usage by 10%, and you can build the bureaucratic complex, and you can do administrator jobs. Very important that you when you do this, don't adopt anything involving administrator jobs in the mid-game, because your economy will tank. Do not mess with the ruling class unless you absolutely have to. Another one that's new as well is, let's take a quick look here. There's merchant guilds, so capital building gives you merchant jobs. Though I'm pretty sure that was already in the game, and merchant give you additional unity, which is rather nice. I'm looking for one in particular here. Where are you? shared burdens. So this society believes in an unequitable distribution of resources. This is very similar to hive minds and any sort of the Gestalt consciousness, whereas in Gestalt consciousness you don't really have factions. With this particular civic, you don't really have a stratified economy. Everybody's equal and everybody will use the same amount of resources. That means you can actually scope fairly easily. You will know what your economy is going to be doing next without having to deal with, oh, this is how many things my rulers are going to consume. This is how many things my workers are going to consume. You will know exactly what's going on. And everything has consumer goods for every single pop is basically the same. And that right there is rather cool. And of course, it increases stability by 5%, which is nice. And on top of that, it comes with its own little voice pack as well, which is just absolutely delightful. And we'll just quickly go over it.
The springs of cooperation flow most abundant. Automation, open access, shared wealth. With these we shall unite the stars in song.
Yeah. They're space communists. Anyway, we're going to go and wrap it up here. There's been quite a lot of overhauling here, and especially considering MegaCorp is getting all these individual civics that can, of course, be min-maxed through various setups. For instance, anything involving Unity can be set up with, well, let's say you're a Xenophile and it increases trade value. You want to stack that with anything involving trade value and that sort of thing. So there's quite a lot of stuff that you can do this, and min-maxing it together with ethics is going to be really useful, and I really hope that you're having a fun time on constructing your empires in your head right now, or when the expansion comes out, or if the expansion is out for you when you're watching this video, you're going to have a fun time with that as well. Get those pen on those papers. Let's start constructing your favorite empire. Feel free to leave your ideas down in the comments below. I'm always interested to see what you guys have to say, and let me know what kind of empire you want to start out with. You want to go straight for a MegaCorp, or you're going to go for something a little bit more vanilla? Anyway, thank you so much for watching, and until next time, take good care of yourselves, and as always, each other.